All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming on. We'll try to bring a little bit of cheer, although I guess that's kind of weird when we talk about anti-Semitism. But the cheer comes from being together and talking together and continuing with our studies of anti-Semitism. And as I told you, it's really, I would say I would call it perhaps not just anti-Semitism in the Megillah, but it's about really diving into the Megillah and looking for hints of anti-Semitism that are strewn around all over the place. Some of it seem more blatant, as we will see, and some of them come through midrashim. Okay. Going back to where we stopped last time, and I also have a source sheet, which as I keep putting up occasionally. Let's see, last time, where did we, like on Chet or something we stopped. Yes, we stopped on Chet. Okay. Just want to refresh ourselves, our memories. Those who have noise in the background or conversations, you can mute, but you're always welcome to unmute to speak. And we started talking about Haman, which remember we started by saying after these happenings, meaning after Mordechai saved the king's life, guess what happened? He raised Haman. Interesting, right? I mean, we know that at the end of the story, actually Mordechai becomes Mishneh LaMelech Achashverosh, becomes second in command. But that didn't happen here. And you have to wonder about the juxtaposition of Mordechai saving Achashverosh's life by revealing the plot of Bigtan and Teresh, not getting rewarded, although some midrashim say he was somewhat rewarded because the king said you don't have to bow down to Haman. That's really a midrash. That's it's definitely not in the text. Robert, I think there might be background noise by you, but it's fine as long as it doesn't get louder. And we started talking about why would it be, or we did speak about why would Mordechai not bow down to Haman? Was he taking a chance? Was he taking a risk? Why? It sounds like we discussed the fact that even if there were other Jews, the Megillah doesn't actually say that the other Jews didn't bow down to the king. So therefore, what must we assume? That they did. Otherwise, why would the Megillah specifically highlight Mordechai, other than the fact that, of course, our main protagonists, our main actors on the stage of Megillat Esther are Mordechai, Esther, Haman, and Achashverosh. But it does seem interesting that only he would, and was he taking a chance? And I just want to ask people right here, before we go back to Pasuk Chet, I want to ask people, if you have any experience with somebody standing up for their religion, the Jewish religion, in a way that made you feel it could be a little bit like Mordechai. No, I don't either. I mean, I don't right this second either come to mind. Do we think it's current? Yeah, Milton. You're unmuted. Oh, no, you're not. Sorry.
Yehuda HaMaccabee.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Yeah, Yehuda HaMaccabee. Beautiful. Yeah. Great. I can give you the name of a woman also. Do you remember Devorah, Hanevi'ah, Deborah, the prophetess? She sings in her, remember, she leads the nation into battle and then defeats Sisera's army. But then in the next pasuk, in the next chapter, is Shirat Devorah, Deborah's poem or song. And there she speaks about Yael, something minashim Yael, like she's the best. And what's the story of Yael? Yael was the wife of Heber Akeni. Am I right about that? I think that's the name. unless I got her mixed up with somebody else, or hit her husband, I mean, but they were supposed to be allies of Sisera. Hi, Elmer. Welcome back. Welcome back. They were supposed to be allies. So Sisera thought that it was safe to go into Yael's tent. And imagine Yael, remember, he's running away from the battle, which Dvoran Barak led, where the Jews conquered Sisera's army. This is in Judges, chapters 4 and 5. So he's looking around, where should I go, where should I go? And he sees Yael, and Yael beckons him to come into the tent, or he asks her, just imagining that she's beckoning him. But she doesn't hide him for the reasons that he thinks. She actually hides him and gets him to fall asleep. Who knows if she slipped a potion in, or it says she gave him milk, I think. That's supposed to soothe you when you're going to sleep. I would prefer tea without caffeine myself, but everybody each have their own. And I'm also dairy-free, and I don't think they had oat milk and soy milk and almond milk then, but that's separate. Oh, welcome back. Yeah, so many people. Rav Yonah was in Israel on a mission. Can't wait to hear about it, but I'm on a class. Thank you. Good to see you. He's still carrying a big bag, like as if he's schlepping back from Israel. I want to see what's in there. So he went on a YCT mission. Oh, wow. Leftover socks for Israel? Wow. They'll go back for Chayalim. Beautiful. I looked like it. It looked like a bag of stuff for Israel. Beautiful. Nice. So Israel's already crept into our morning class, which is wonderful. Okay, so back to Yael. So what does Yael do? She actually takes the tent peg and drives it into the temple of his face, and she kills him. So that's what you reminded me of, Milton. So we have perfect, because we have a man who stood up to terror and a woman who stood up to terror. So now we can continue with our class. Let us open to chapter 3, verse 8. Remember the setting of the stage. Who did not bow down to Haman?
Mordechai.
Mordechai. Do we think that all the Jews didn't bow down to Haman?
Don't know.
We don't know. Agreed, Judy, but not in the text. In the text, it doesn't say that the Jews didn't bow down. It says only Mordechai. And if you remember in the previous pasuk, not in the previous pasuk, in pasuk Vav 6, what does it say? Vayives beinav lishloach yad b'Mordechai levado. It was contemptible in his eyes. I don't know why it was contemptible. I don't know why that word is used. To lay his hand on Mordechai alone, for they had told him the people of Mordechai. So who's the people of Mordechai?
Jews.
The Jews. The Jews. So why was Vayives beinav? Does anybody have an answer for that? Why was it contemptible? Why was it contemptible? Why? It feels like such an odd word. Bizayon is to shame someone, or I guess contemptible is a good word for it. Any thoughts about that? Why does that make sense? Going back to pasuk, to verse 6, I'm just wondering if the pasuk even makes sense. Why would that be? If you just read this pasuk by itself, forget about what happens later on. Forget about everything you know about Haman. All you know about Haman is that he somehow rose to power. We will see soon that he also bribed the king. He gave him a lot of money. And that's probably a good part of the reason why he rose to power. And then he sees that there's one person who doesn't bow down to him, Mordechai. Vayar Haman, this is in verse 5. Mordechai does not bow down and prostrate himself in front of him. And Haman was, 1 second, filled with anger. Debbie, thank you, 1 second. Vayives be'einav, it's such an odd word. Vayives be'einav, it appeared shameful, contemptible, something like that, to only levado, to only lay his hand on Mordechai, meaning to kill him. Why? Because they told him the nation, and then he wanted lashmidat kol hayudim asher b'chol malchut Achashverosh. Yes, Debbie. Are you muted? You might be muted. Looks like you're muted. Unmute.
Now you're muted again. You unmuted.
Wait, Debbie, here. Yeah, try again. There you go. Don't touch.
Okay. It's sort of like a hangnail. It was that type of, like it's a little thing, but it takes your whole mind off of anything else. Have you ever gone to bed with a hangnail? It's,
yes, you can't, like, it bothers you every time you turn, every time. Yes.
And
That
I
is
think
so
this is what,
interesting. Okay, so that, oh, that's so interesting. Wow, that's such a great comparison. Okay, anybody else? So are you just saying that about the fact that he wanted to lay his hands on all the Jews, or are you saying that about the fact Vayivez be'enav? That it was,
I was thinking more of the first one, but I was thinking of cut off his nose despite his face. Like cut off all of the Jews despite reality, sort of, I mean, like, how do you cure a problem? You know, I don't know.
how do you cure a problem? Yes, yes. Oh, interesting. Okay, so hold on one second, Judy, 1 second. So I think, Debbie, what you're saying is he sees it as a more widespread issue. In other words, clearly for him, Mordechai is simply representative of the Jews. So again, this speaks to why he's going to why he wants to kill the whole Jewish nation. I just wonder if we could translate Vayivez as it was beneath him, because that's sort of feels like a better translation. Judy, what did you want to say?
I'm thinking of, am I, I'm not on mute, okay.
We're good. You're good. We hear
I'm
you.
thinking of narcissistic leaders we've had in the past,
No
and-
name. Yeah.
including one in the present who hopefully won't become one again. There's a sense of, if you're insulted, there's such a deep sense of shame. That's Vayivez be'enav, that you have to get real revenge. You can't just get this guy. If you're gonna really get him, you're gonna dig him out, get all his people, because he felt ashamed.
Yeah, that really gave me goosebumps. I think there is something to that. In other words, and that goes a little bit to what Debbie, like putting the two together. Did somebody else want to say something? Karen, did you want to say something? No, you're good. So when
No, it's very interesting.
yes, who said
Judy's
that?
and Debbie's.
Oh, Karen, yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting what you're saying. I want you to say it again, Judy, so we get the words right, because that feels very powerful.
I'm not sure I can get the words right again.
Whatever, try.
But I think that Haman felt so hurt and ashamed by that behavior that he needed to make a big revenge to make up for it, to feel powerful.
And the way I would, yes, that, in other words, the Vayivez comes from a feeling of his shame, which is so interesting. That's really, I think, the twist in what you're saying, that Haman felt shamed in front of everybody else, perhaps, that somebody would have the audacity, the chutzpah, the good place to use the word chutzpah, the chutzpah to stand up to him in front of everybody else, because maybe he thought then other people would get the same idea, or how could anybody really, there's no way. The king sent out an edict. It must be that everybody will, and I want everybody to bow down to me meaning Haman. So he felt shamed, and therefore this, in other words, again, what I'm trying to say is that this word Vayivez, it's kind of, you're saying it's reflexive on himself.
Yes.
So that's more of a slight twist, a little midrashic translation of it, but that feels very good, because I never really understood why it would be shameful or contemptible for him to just reach out to Mordechai. Like, why is that word used? But I like your explanation, Vayivez be'enav, meaning he was shamed in his own eyes.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's a different reading of the pasuk. It's not the straightforward, but it feels really good. It feels like it fits the meaning better. So Vayivez be'enav, he became shamed in his own eyes. Okay, I'm reinterpreting the words. And then lishloach yad b'yad Mordechai levado, so then he can't just kill Mordechai. He has to go deeper. In other words, as you said, he has to take a much greater revenge than just cutting off that little hangnail. Yeah, Judy Stiglitz. Judy, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, but you're off camera, but that's okay.
Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to say, it just reminds me of the word ichta. That
What word? Oh, ichsa?
that he just found the Jews despicable. Just like that's the first level of anti-Semitism, is to dehumanize people. Is to, like in Rwanda, they called the people cockroaches.
Right.
And I don't know if it's Lahavdil or it's to compare. Also in the Shoah, they just totally dehumanized. They made us into numbers, not people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. Thank you. Good. Anybody else? Robert?
When Haman came into the palace and left the palace, the first person he would see when he left each time would be Mordecai, who waited outside to inquire about Esther's well-being.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice
and
connecting
that
the
would-
psukim.
Yeah, that would constantly offend him. And I've read an opinion that Mordecai did not bow down because Haman wore some kind of
Right, we
idol on
talked
his
about that
shoulder.
last time, but I think you weren't here. Yep. So
Yeah.
that would be a way of saying that he's standing up for his Jewish religion. And that's a midrash. Remember, that's a midrash, which is fine, but I always want to remind us what's in the text and what's in midrash. That's a very nice connecting, Robert, of the fact that of the psukim right before, 1 second, I see you, Ruby, that he would come by every day. So Mordecai Haman saw him a lot. Because Haman was always in the palace. He's cahoots with the king at this point. He's really tight with him. That's really nice reading, Robert. Thank you. That also puts together, why does the Megillah written like that? Every pasuk has its place. So that's a very nice reading. I really appreciate it. So not only did it didn't happen once. It said Yom V'Yom every day. Because Yom V'Yom, he would go to inquire about Esther. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yes, Ruby.
If the Jews were bowing down to the king, how could Haman expect his hatred to Mordecai to be interpreted as anything but personal?
Good question. There may, by the way, not have been other Jews. That's one answer. It could be theoretically if there were other Jews there that they did or didn't bow down. But remember, we had one interpretation that said that Jews weren't allowed to live in Shushan except for Mordecai. But even if it,
But wouldn't it have been mentioned that some Jews bowed down, some Jews didn't bow down?
but
So
that's
by
not what it says. So
Don't we interpret it as that the Jews did bow down?
I would say so, yeah. And yet he didn't take it as personal. He took it as representing all the Jews. That's one of the first indications that we see this as anti-Semitism. Even if you can explain it away by saying, oh, well, he's so shamed that, when somebody does something against you, I will say there are tribes and there are places where there's an honor, a family honor thing. So you have to kill people in the
Yeah,
family.
but others would see it as being personal. Others,
Right,
I'm
right.
not saying that these others were.
Correct. Yeah, very nice. Debbie, you want to add to that?
Yeah, you don't need to have evidence. When we look at what Pharaoh said, he was like hypothetical.
Hypothesizing.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, he just hypothesized from this particular instance, and Pharaoh had even less evidence. It didn't take a lot of evidence. It's not like,
Right. This is not a logical, I think we can all agree this is not logical. This is not sensible. Like on one hand, we might say, Mordecai, you should have bowed down. I don't know. I don't have that because remember what we said. It doesn't say he didn't bow down to the king. And Robert, that might be where they get it from, that there was an idol, because otherwise, why wouldn't Mordecai bow down? If he bows down to the king, and if the king said that he has to bow down to Haman, why not bow down to Haman? That's where the Midrash gets it. Well, we think that maybe he had an idol, and therefore we know Mordecai won't bow down to an idol. By the way, here's a picture in my graphic novel. I'll spotlight myself for a second so you can see. That's how I kind of always imagined it myself. So you see how everybody's prostrating themselves before Haman, but Mordecai is not. And then they say to him, how come you're not bowing down? And he says, what does he say? Remember, it's a graphic novel for kids. I'm a Jew, and I don't do that. Now, we are told that you're supposed to bow down for a king. But anyway, I think
Haman wasn't a king.
but he wasn't exactly, but he wasn't a king. Exactly, which would explain why he might have bowed down to Ahasuerus, but not bowed down to Haman. Okay, so going back to verse 6, we do see what I think seems obvious to me, a blatant case of anti-Semitism. To take one person and then say, oh, Judy Stiglitz, yeah, please.
Question, when
Yeah.
Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs met the Queen, Did he bow to her?
Guess what, Judy? You get to look it up. First of all, and tell us next time, except, by the way, no class next time, just telling you, you'll get an email about that. I'm on a rabbinic fellowship, so I won't be around next Wednesday. I apologize, but we hopefully will be able to meet one more time before Pesach. Maybe we'll do a Pesach class. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far yet. I'll think about it. But Judy, even if he didn't bow down, he was knighted,
Right,
right? So if he's knighted, I think you have to bow down when you're knighted, right?
right, that's,
But you can look that up. I think that's a fascinating question, and let us know in 2 weeks. Will you do that for us?
where do I look? Just Google it?
Google,
Same
yeah.
place I would look.
Okay, all right.
Rabbanit Google.
Thank.
Yeah, Lance.
Rabbi Sachs refused,
Really?
Thanks you,
but
Lance.
that's what it says.
Oh, he looked it up
Hey,
already. See?
I looked it up.
So what did he do when he was knighted?
He improvised by wheeling over a railing that he could lean on in a way that would incline toward the queen. So, in other words, he sort of faked it.
That's kind of cool. Okay, good. Good question and great answer. Thank
Okay.
you, Robert.
Thank you.
Okay, Judy,
he-
you're off the hook. You don't have to look it up. Yes, Robert.
The queen asked, "Why is this night not like all other nights?"
Cute, adorable. All right. We are now on Pasuk Chet, and here is going to be, which is verse 8. Here is going to be our next example of false news / anti-Semitism. Vayomer Haman lamelech Achashverosh. So now Haman, remember what we said, that Haman wants to kill all the Jews. He doesn't just want to kill Mordechai, he wants to kill everybody. Vayomer Haman, so he's trying to figure out how to put this in motion. How's he do it? He has to get Achashverosh to agree. Yeshno am echad, there is one nation. By the way, does he say which nation it is?
No.
No. Mefuzar or meforad bein ha'amim, which is scattered and dispersed among all the nations. He's actually setting it up on purpose. B'chol medinot malchutecha, in all the provinces of your kingdom. V'datehem shonot mikol am, and their laws are different from every people. V'datei hamelech einam osim, and they do not keep the laws of the king. Is that true that they don't keep the laws of the king?
No.
It's not true.
It's like,
Except Mordechai.
It-
Yeah, Debbie.
yeah, it's sort of like when people hear, and I don't know all the details of Sharia law, but when they hear that, and because some of them are probably very practical things that people believe, it's like all of a sudden it's just like, oh, he believes in Sharia law, we have to get rid of him. I think it's like a knee-jerk response to
Yep.
an observance,
Right,
observance.
and he's very smart in the way he sets it up.
Yeah.
Because, well, I'll just finish the pasuk and then go back to that. Now he can say that they're not following the king's rules because he has Mordechai as an example. He only has one person as an example right now. And there's not worth it for the king to leave them alone, which is so interesting the way he sets it up. So there's a question, why didn't Haman mention the Jews by name? Before I read the commentary here, does somebody have an idea?
Yeah, get yourself worked up.
Why doesn't he
Get
say
everybody wrapped up, get everybody sort of
riled up?
Yes, riled up.
Right. In case you had any pre-notion that Jews are okay, I'm going to get rid of them by first just saying this is a terrible, terrible nation. At the end, at some point, I'm going to spring it on you. So it says here, Haman realized that since the Jews paid taxes and their intelligence made them an asset to the country, if he just said the Jewish people, Achashverosh would not necessarily readily consent to have them annihilated. Therefore, Am Echad, one people. So one way of saying is that they're insignificant, they're not important, they're scattered everywhere. And he also gave this kind of feeling of being nomadic. I don't want to say gypsy, because I know that's not appropriate, but that's the feeling that comes in my head, not in a bad way, but I know that today it can be thought of that way. I would say nomadic, or they don't have power. On the other hand, you could say the opposite, right? You could argue against what I read here, that even though they're dispersed everywhere, they consider themselves Am Echad. Right? Usually when you have 127 provinces, let's say, I mean, it's a little hard because it's hard to tease out the religion from the culture. But let's say you would be French, or you would be loyal to France, or loyal to Spain, or loyal to Greece, or whatever it is. And he's saying, oh no, they're loyal to their Am Echad, to their particular datehem, their particular dat, their religion. Now, I don't know if at the time religion was basically listening to the king. Maybe that was religion. There's no Christianity yet, is there?
I have,
I don't think so. No. Christianity was after. Sorry, it was after the Second Temple. This is between the First and Second Temple. Just getting my history straight in my head. Yes, Debbie.
I was thinking of the parallel between, it's like a reveal party. Like Haman, all of a sudden is revealed. Ahasuerus is always right there to be revealed too. He sort of says the same thing. It's sort of parallel to what Esther does when she comes and reveals who Haman is. I mean, it's sort of like, it's sort of a literary technique.
Right.
Interesting.
And you're building up anticipation, or I think, who was it who said that if you said the Jews, if you have any pre-notion about the Jews, he's going to set it up and give a feeling about them. And then when you say to Jews, like, wow, I never knew that about them. Yes, Ruby.
Yeah, our Jews are an independent nation or body, but when push comes to shove, if the king and Haman understood Jewish thinking, the Jews would still be loyal more to God than to the king. So there was always that threat.
Yeah, right. Very nice. Yep. And it's proven by Mordechai, supposedly. Even though, right, I mean, Mordechai saved Ahasuerus' life. They always seemed loyal. They never did anything that wasn't loyal to the king. There was no proof of it. You know, it reminds me of the idea that the Jews today, that we hear that the Jews control the media and the politics and the money. And yet the politicians don't feel that they need to get the Jewish vote. So like, it just makes no sense, right? People aren't seeing the two sides of the same coin.
I like your take on, and I really never thought of that despite that they were dispersed, they, in a way, were still very unified.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a new one for me.
That's for me. That was my thought. That's actually
Yeah.
opposite of what it says here in the commentary. You could read both into it. That's the way I see it. That they're
Mhm.
actually Am Echad. They're actually Am Echad. Which, as you pointed out, Debbie, is what Esther says as well. Okay,
Mhm.
but we'll get to that. That's not for a while. So he's setting this up. So now he gives a suggestion of what's 1 second. Okay. Where are we? No, we're good. Ima lamelech tov, if this finds favor in the king's eyes, he katev la'abdam. He will write an edict to get rid of them, to destroy them. And just like I happened to mention, at the same time, 10,000 kikar kesef, 10,000 talents of silver, eshkol al yidei osei hamelacha, I will weigh out into their hands. That's how you did it. You weighed silver. Lavi el kinzei hamelech, and they'll bring it into the king's treasuries. So look at what he's doing. And we know that that's true as well. We know, I mean, I can't prove it because I can't show the bank accounts, but there's a lot of money being funneled into universities. I mean, I've read about it, as far as I know, this is true, that for years Iran has funneled and teaching anti-Semitism, basically, so that, and you need a lot of money to do that, which they have, like an unlimited amount. Yeah, Debbie.
Who was his constituency? Who does he have all that money from? It's just like all of a sudden, I always have thought of Haman as sort of an individual. And now
So-
when you focus in
Yeah.
on money and everything like that, it's all,
Right,
wow.
so there's a big question about that, and what at least the Midrashim say is that when he married Zeresh, that she was a person of royalty, a noble woman, and she's the one who had a lot of money. We don't have any sources that tell us exactly where it's from. But that's a good question. And then the next thing is, Vayasar HaMelech et tabato me'al yado. He takes his ring, his special signet ring off his finger. Vayitna leHaman ben Hamdat ha'Agagi tzorer HaYudim. And he gives it to Haman. Remember, again, repeating Ben Hamdata, we discussed that. Ha'Agagi is from the Agagite lineage, Tzorer HaYehudim. And I want to remind you that it actually fits beautifully into here, that tzorer can mean the adversary of the Jews, but another way of translating tzror is a bunch. Something gets bunched together. Like this is a tzror maftechot. This is a bunch of keys. And the tzror was what amtachatehem. Those were the bunches of the sacks that the brothers brought back from Egypt, and they had to open it and loosen it, and they found money inside. Remember that Yosef had returned their money. So here is the first indication, if you look at a midrashic translation, that when Haman gets Ahashverosh on his side, then it starts gathering the Jewish people. And we see that as soon as the edict comes out, we'll see in a minute, that what happens? The Jews all don sackcloth and they fast and they're rend their garments, because it is starting to actually aggregate the Jews instead of aggregate. That's my own little pun. And the
It didn't take Haman didn't take him long to convince Ahasuerus.
Exactly. And by the way, he hasn't even asked.
I
who
know, it's
Haman
like
is.
one pasuk and
Right.
there you go.
And look
Yeah.
and also, Karen, he hasn't even asked who the Am is. Like
Right,
maybe his best
Right.
friend.
exactly. Yeah.
So kind of like hint, hint, nudge,
Yeah.
nudge, wink, wink. We know who we're talking about. We don't even have to say the
Exactly.
name.
This parallels a lot what's going on today too.
Correct. Yes. I mean, that's what I feel as well.
Sad, very sad. Yeah.
Okay. I want to read something to you. This is in Eliyahu Kitov's book of Our Heritage. Now I have to find it. I copied it. Just a minute. Okay.
Which by the way was translated by my original rabbi, Rabbi Nachman Bullman.
Really? Let me just see
Virginia.
if it says that here. Yep, there you go. Translated from Hebrew, Sefer Todah by Nathan Bullman. Go
Right.
you, Judy. Awesome. So I knew it in Hebrew. He was just putting it out when I was a young girl, Rebbe Eliyahu Kitov. My father, Alav Shalom, used to get them in little pamphlets as he wrote the next piece, I guess. And I've always loved this book, Sefer HaTodah. If you know Hebrew, you can read in Hebrew. If you know English, you can read Book of Our Heritage. He has a wonderful compilation of halacha, custom, stories, midrashim, according to the months of the year. And every month you can read about that month. And I often go to him. So listen to this. There's so much in here, but I'm just going to go to this. Wait 1 second. I'll go back to afterwards. Haman's letter to all the people and provinces in the name of the king Ahashverosh. Endless peace be unto you. Let it be known to you, there is one man in our midst who is not of our palace, but is of royal ancestry, of the seed of Amalek. That's himself. He is among the greatest of the generation. His name is Haman. It's as if he's writing it in the name of Ahashverosh. He told Ahashverosh, this is what your letter should say. And Ahashverosh is like, whatever, you write it. And he has made a minor request of us. Look how he's setting it up. There is a people among us, which is the lowliest of all people, but they are arrogant. They seek our harm, false news, and their mouths are filled with curses against the king. What if this is correct? Among the lowliest of people, but they're arrogant. They seek our harm. Their mouths are filled with curses against the king. What is the curse with which they curse us? The Lord reigns out. So then he takes Hebrew psukim and uses them. Hashem yimloch leolam ba'ed. God will reign forever. And I don't know what the second one is. I have to look it up in the Hebrew, what the Hebrew is. The nation shall perish from his land. So, you can take a pasuk out of context and say the nations will perish from his land, meaning that they'll all be destroyed, as if the Jews are about to destroy the whole world. They also say to inflict vengeance upon peoples, reproof against the nations. Again, it's a translation from a Hebrew pasuk. They refuse to acknowledge gratitude towards those who bestowed good upon them. Okay, now listen to this. He is now going to spin the narrative. Listen to how he does it. Come and see what they did to poor Pharaoh. When they went, this is crazy. When they went down to Egypt, he welcomed them cordially and settled them in the best part of his land. He was awesome. He didn't write that. I added that. He fed them in the years of famine. That's true, like the whole world, right? I mean, they bought food. and gave them the best food of his land. I don't know if they gave him the best food. He had a palace to build, and they did the building like it as if it was a, partnership. Nevertheless, he could not prevail against them. Now, who is it who said? Debbie, you said, who said? He had no proof that the Jews, Pharaoh had no proof that the Jews, I can't remember who said it. Did you say it, Debbie?
Yeah, I understand.
He had no proof that the Jews, he made it up. He said, oh, if our enemies rise against us, the Jews are going to join them and they're going to. Nevertheless, he could not prevail against them. More than this, they came with a pretext and said to him, we shall go to sacrifice unto the Lord our God a distance of 3 days. By the way, what did Haman conveniently skip over?
They were slaves.
They were slaves. He just didn't even mention that. How easy is it to spin a narrative? Sorry if I'm getting excited. When you skip over parts, and so people don't know, they didn't even have Google then. Not that today a lot of people aren't even willing to look up in their history books. So when they asked to sacrifice, that was after they've been slaves, and Moshe asked to let my people go. After you shall return, if you wish to, lend us silver and gold, utensils and clothing. So he's mixing up the timeline also here. Whereupon the Egyptians loaned them their silver and gold and all their fine clothes. Now, when did that happen? That happened during Choshech, and they did it. Yeah. The Jews loaded mules without number with their belongings till they emptied all of Egypt. That didn't happen, and fled. When Pharaoh heard they had fled, he went after them to return his money. What really happened? He made them slaves. God brought the makot, and Pharaoh said, leave Egypt. I can't take these makot. Those are the plagues. What did they do to him? There was a man in their midst by the name of Moshe, the son of Amram. With the use of magic, he smote the sea with the rod till the sea became dry. Whereupon they all entered the bed of the dry sea and crossed the sea. What I do not know how they crossed the sea and how the waters became dry. Okay. When Pharaoh saw it, he entered after them to return his money. He wasn't going to kill them. He just wanted his money back, according to Haman. I do not know how they pushed him into the sea, which they didn't. He went in by himself. But he and his entire army were drowned in the sea. They did not remember the good he bestowed upon them. Do you hear what ingrates they were? Further, see what they did to Amalek, my grandfather, when he came to wage war against them. What happened? Did they do anything to promote war against Amalek? We read this. Remember, it was in our source sheet. Just read it right now. Here's my source sheet. I have it. Just a minute. My pile of papers. Oh, no, I don't have that source. I have, remember what Amalek did to you. When you, along the way, when you came out of Egypt, this is in Deuteronomy. This isn't when it actually happened in Exodus. When you were weary and worn out, they met you on the journey and attacked all who were lagging behind. They had no fear of God. That's really what happened. Not what they did to Amalek, my grandfather. Where did Amalek come from? So that's da-da-da-da. Oh, they answered Bilam. Now he's going to talk about Bilam, the prophet. Anyway, just want to see. I'm skipping over the part about Bilam. What did Moshe, their leader, do? He had a disciple by the name of Yoshua ben Nun, who was exceedingly brutal and utterly merciless. Said Moshe to him, choose for us men, go out to wage war against Amalek. Is that what happened? Or is it that Amalek started up with them and then they came to defend? Now, this goes on and on. He goes through, he speaks about Sisra. He speaks about Agag, Haman's grandfather. He speaks about, anyway, he goes through and spins the narrative so that it seems like the Jews were ingrates, waged war against everybody. Now, I do have to say, it is true that they waged war in Israel to conquer the land. So that you can't get away from. And the truth is, it is a little hard to read the Nevi'im. But they did always offer the nations the opportunity to leave the land or to be their subjects, saying, we came from here and now we came back. They had planned on coming back from Egypt way before, but they couldn't because they were slaves until Moshe took them out. I would say Moshe and God. And now, okay, and then he says there was a king named David. David destroyed all the kingdoms without mercy. After him was Shlomo. He built a house for Israel called the Beit HaMikdash. I do not know what they had inside, but when they embark on war, they enter it into the Holy of Holies, practice sorcery there. And when they emerge, they kill and they destroy the world, as if describing the Jews to be these all-powerful sorcerers. So I think that preys on the fears that people have that somebody could actually be. So there's elements of truth here, but it's spinning it in a way. It's not like they come out and go do, and everybody dies. Although we do have a couple of instances where we see miracles, but the miracles come like splitting of the sea. The miracles don't specifically usually come from, I mean, the walls of Jericho that we have, Jericho, that they fell down, but then the Jews used their own might to slay the nations. Out of abundance of good, they rebelled against their God. Further, that God of theirs became aged, and Nebuchadnezzar came and burnt the house of theirs. So like as if God's power went down, Nebuchadnezzar exiled them from their soil and brought them among us, but they have not yet changed their repulsive practices. Although they are in exile in our midst, they scoff at us and at the faith of our gods. So, you know, even though the Jews might keep their own religion, does that mean that we make fun of, they scoff? Do we scoff at the faith of other gods? You know, he's using words that get people defensive and angry. And now we have come to a common resolve. We have cast lots to destroy them from the world and to determine the most suitable time for us to destroy them. The lot fell in the month of Adar on the 13th of the month. And now when these letters reach you, you are all to be prepared on that day to annihilate all the Jews in your midst, young and old, infants and women in one day. You are not allowed any remnant to remain among them. This is in Esther Rabbah. He didn't make it up, Eliyahu Kito. Esther Rabbah is a collection of midrashim. Any thoughts about that?
Sounds very Hamasi.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah, Judy.
I was thinking
Judy, then Debbie.
since October 7th, I stopped already fighting with anti-Semites on social media. And all of this is exactly what I'm hearing. Every single thing. They
Is a
take
spin.
bits and pieces of reality and then build on it. The Arabs welcomed us to Israel and gave us and helped us out after the war, and look what we did to them. I mean, these are the things that I'm hearing people saying. So it's
And they
fascinating.
believe it, I assume.
Oh, of course they believe it. They believe it wholeheartedly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a scary place, social media. But the positive part is you know what people are actually thinking that
Right.
you wouldn't believe. But everything you said is what's going on social
Right.
media.
It really feels like it echoes what's happening. I agree. Yeah, Debbie.
Yeah. Well, I avoid social media. I don't look at it. But I remember reading an
Smart
art
lady.
essay by, I think it's Alice Hoffman or something like that. Alice wrote The Color Purple. She wrote an essay called Read the Talmud. And she also did exactly that. She extrapolated a sentence here, a sentence there to prove how awful Jewish people are. And you know, and what was funny is like, read the Talmud. How many volumes are the Talmud, and how long was it written, and how many people wrote it? But she had it. Her method of doing it was like as if it was in one voice, and the voice was of, you know, all the Jewish people.
Right.
Because even though I'm not a Talmudist, but I know that there are arguments and there are different points of view, and people are, but to extract a false truth. I have a question, and it's something because
Yeah.
we're getting to the end, is yesterday I talked to a young girl, and she's an Israeli girl who's visiting in Rochester, and I took her to see a museum, and we had a cup of tea, and then she lives in Netivot, which is close to the southern border, and
Right.
we were talking about the situation, and she basically said, you know, the world is all bad. Everybody's an anti-Semite, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, that's not how I have experienced the world, although, there are elements of that, and I know that that's a Jewish response sometimes to say, well, ein ma lasot, everybody's an anti-Semite, scratch his skin, he's going to come out. For me, I can't live like that. That's not the way I'm going to live. I'm going to look at people as people, but it is a response, and I don't know. Do you think that should be our response, or How do you think
No, no,
know?
for sure not. That should totally not be our response. Yeah. What should be our response, Debbie?
Well, I think avoiding social media because people feel anonymous and say things. You don't even know who they are. Do you? I
Right.
mean, you're listening to people who, who are in their basement,
Yeah. I have to say that's kind of why I laid off and started blocking people. But I also think it's important to know what people think out there.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I agree.
Even though it's scary.
So
but
what do you
I also-
recommend to this girl? Yeah, Judy.
But because I also wanted to say that until October 7th, particularly, it always bothered me that, particularly in the film community, there's this attitude of everybody hates us, and now I'm finding it's hard to keep my balance, because I think the easier response is to say everybody hates us, then you don't have to think anymore.
I want to suggest to people something that I've started working on here is to look for opportunities for allyship.
Good, good.
I'm part of or spearheading
That's true.
helping spearhead the by anti-Semitism committee, which I said really strongly, I don't like calling it the anti-Semitism committee because obviously we're not promoting anti-Semitism. Instead, to call it anti-Semitism education and allyship, which
Good.
feels way better to talk about it from that point of view. And I personally have been seeking out opportunities for allyship. I've been to anti-Semitism training with people who are Jews, people who are non-Jews, with people of color, with people not of color, all different cross spectrum. I've been to 2 interfaith gatherings, one called an iftar, where it was breaking the fast for the Ramadan, but also for Tanit Esther, for us, the day of the fast. You didn't have to break your fast if you weren't fasting, obviously. That was here in Riverdale. And I went to another one in Brooklyn where I spoke about Pesach. So and there was a Muslim woman there who was breaking her fast. She spoke beautifully, sat next to me. And she said she feels there's so much hate in the world, and she burst into tears. She said, I've been thinking of Gaza for the last 6 months. Obviously I didn't respond to that, but we're in the same room, we're talking to each other, and we want to build bridges. So one way is to turn off social media for yourself, and another one is to build allyship and bridges where we can. They're not available everywhere, but more and more initiatives are coming out to look for ways to just be friends with people so that they won't see us as this, amorphous group of people who are bad. So that's what I would suggest, Debbie.
No, I belong to a Muslim Jewish coalition. It's been a little shaky.
So not
recently,
surprised to hear that.
And I volunteer at this Muslim food bank once a month. But I have to say you're right. I was in the grocery store, George and I were in the grocery store, and we saw a Muslim couple one night, very cute little couple. And we said, I hope you're having a meaningful holiday. And they said, oh, yes. And then we had this little interchange. And, and I said, well, I'm worried a little bit. And he said, don't be worried. It will all be all right.
So George said that, or he said that, the Muslim?
He said it, the Muslim said it. It'll be all right. I'm sitting there, almost crying. And I have another friend who's a non-Jewish woman, who's a very good friend of mine. She has blue lights out on her porch because in Rochester, one of the ways of showing that you're anti-Semitic is to have blue lights, or I don't know who did this, but
blue for Israel.
And I agree with you 100%. You'll talk to people. I talked to a guy in an elevator in New York who's from Egypt, and we had this lovely interchange. Nice. And I think if you reach out to people, I think you're 100% right. It's different than looking at anonymous. I mean, and I think you're right also, Judy. You have to be aware,
Right. So let's balance all these pieces, but I want to encourage people, if you can, if you're able to, it was a turning point for me. It's not something I have done particularly, except for the last few months. And I find that is one small way that I feel I can do something positive. It's easier to say, no, I don't have time. It's easier to say, I don't feel like doing that. I did not feel like driving to Brooklyn, believe me, but I was so glad that I did it. I was really glad that I did it.
Right.
I wouldn't do it every day.
Two quick questions.
Yeah.
Do you see progress? Do you feel like this allyship that you're currently working on is making a difference? Or, sometimes things don't make a difference immediately, but
Right.
long range they do.
I mean, I'm just one person, so I don't know that I'm making a difference, but what I can tell you is because I put myself out there personally, I have more and more opportunities to do more. So like tomorrow night, I have something and there's an iftar that I was invited to, and I'm sorry that I can't go to it, but I just can't because I can't do one more thing. But more people, I'm actually collaborating. I don't think that's a nice word. It is collaboration though, with a lovely younger Muslim, not Muslim, Christian pastor or minister, one of them. I don't know. There are levels in Christianity and of what you're allowed to do or can do. And she came to our Martin Luther King evening. We had an amazing, really wonderful little program where we watched a movie about prejudice and then spoke about it. We might bring it again to the Buy It online or in person. I don't know. And she came and then reached out, and we've spoken already. We did a Zoom together and we've spoken about creating an allyship in the Bronx among, doesn't have to be Black specifically. She happens to be a Black person, but she said, how cool is it going to be to have two women inviting, right? A Jewish rabbi and a who's female and Orthodox, as that's me, by the way, and a Black Christian, minister who's also a woman. She said that says a lot about that as well. So so thank you for asking that question, Karen. It gives me a moment to reflect on, have I made progress? So I would say I've made progress personally in my own feeling about being open to doing it. And I've made progress in the sense that I am a smiling face who is willing to be approached about things. And has it made a change in anti-Semitism all over the world? Probably not, but doing my own thing in my own corner as much as I can.
Yeah,
And shifting my energies, thank you, a little bit from, let's say, spending the time specifically with specifically interdenominational, which is something that I said, it's shifting my, you only have so much energy and time. Where do we want to put it? Maybe now is an opportunity for us to put, in addition to other things, giving time, money, resources to Israel, but also in creating allyship here in the United States, because we live here in the United States and we see anti-Semitism here in the United States. I don't think the Israelis feel it. I mean, those in Israel. So they don't have to work on anti-Semitism. They have to work on staying safe and whatever peace process, whatever that means, and getting the hostages back. But we can work on allyship here. So something you could just be more open to now. That's all. Just be more open. If you have an opportunity.
I agree with everything you're saying, Yasha Koach. I just always find that there, and perhaps it's
Sorry
on
about
both
the noise.
sides.
The noise, yeah.
Oh, there's just a lack of knowledge.
Yes.
And that has to be addressed somehow through adult education or elementary school. There's just a lack of knowledge.
Right. So there the question is, can somebody be helpful? Like, again, we're calling our committee anti-Semitism, education, and allyship. But, I don't know how much my group specifically can do about education, but we feel that's a goal. So I agree, there's a goal in making sure that people see a broader picture, not reading to them this story from Esther Rabbah, which only shows one side and repaints the picture in a way that makes us seem horrific. Somebody, I was once years and years and years ago, a journalist I was in Israel, and he spoke to us about what they do. Like they said, when there's a new personality on the scene, I mean, I guess social media and other things have changed things since then, but some things are the same. And they said the cartoonists often get together and actually decide how to portray that person. So what do you magnify? And then he said, notice, and I've noticed it since then, this has got to be 40 years, 30 years ago. He said, notice when you see a picture captured in a newspaper article, whether it's in print or online, and then depending on if they're trying to paint that person positively or negatively, they will show a picture which shows, a person who you would feel like, I don't want to be with that person, or a more benevolent person, Or are you catching a person in an uncomfortable, embarrassing thing? Or are you are you capturing a picture of them where they show strength? So I've only noticed that since he pointed it out. You know, sometimes you think, well, that's the picture they have. No, they have 100,000 pictures, but they chose to use that picture. So, so that's a lot about education. Like only after he said that to me did I notice it. That was a teeny little piece of information that I never had before.
Well,
Yes.
yeah.
I just wanted to
All right, my friend. Yes, Robert, anything else to say before I think we're going to stop? So,
Briefly concerning social media. Our intelligence agencies have identified that there are both Russian,
Oh, okay.
Russian farms and Chinese farms, which have hundreds of people actively looking to promote discord and get us angry at each other. and
really?
divide our country.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's
Wait, say
confirmed.
again, where was that from?
Our intelligence agencies.
Right.
What does that
US
mean, our
intelligence.
intelligence? Can you be more specific?
U.S. intelligence agencies. I could put a link about it. Have to go research again, but look up, Google, U.S. intelligence agencies identify troll 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 farms. There's Russian and Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
also I've been involved with. Don't want to get involved with people on social media, but let's say like with certain people running for election in Riverdale, they didn't want to believe that October 7th happened. Some people were saying,
Right.
"Oh, the Israelis did it," and I point them to facts and the UN reports on it, and the Israeli reports
Nice.
investigated it, and they refused to believe it. I said, "You can refuse to believe facts. You're going to refuse to believe intelligence, but don't deny it." You know, like,
Right. So I think what you're saying, everybody here is saying, you look for the opportunities, but you know, Judy, if you're finding it awful to be on social media and you can't, there are some people who don't want to be educated, so then you might as well
No,
move.
I stopped doing that. I started
Right.
blocking people because it was
You
getting.
thought that they were people who
frustrating.
wanted to engage in a
Yes.
discussion,
Yeah,
but that's not what they want.
There have been a couple of times where it starts out like it looks like a discussion
Right,
until
right.
they go off the deep end.
don't get hooked emotionally.
Yeah,
Just give facts
but
and say.
what you said also about the trolls.
Wait, both of you are talking. That doesn't work. Robert, 1 second, let Judy finish and then say what you're gonna say. Yeah,
I
Judy.
was responding to Robert, actually. I see that, what you're saying about the trolls, and it's become a thing where sometimes in a thread, somebody will say, don't bother, this is a troll. I know this one.
Oh, nice,
And then
nice.
people will
Okay,
stop.
thank you. Yeah, Robert, what did you want to say?
Don't get emotionally hooked. Give facts.
Yeah.
Nice.
State your piece. Point the direction to
Yeah.
where the can look at. Don't get disturbed.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I'm not doing that as much anymore because it's not worth the heartburn. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to say where this whole thing started, that the language that was going on and the language that I don't remember who said about that the person who wrote The Color Purple also is the same
Oh,
thing.
Debbie, yeah,
Seeing that online too, the people quoting things from the Talmud that don't exist.
out of context or,
The
yeah.
language that you were talking about, it's all the same. It's all the same.
I know, that letter is like crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, friends, thank you for listening. We have a class. Will people come in a class in 2 weeks? It's a week before, it's a few days before Pesach. I have to see if it makes sense. Would people come on a class then?
Good. Can't
Yeah.
yet. Don't know.
If it's a
You
good
don't know.
one.
What did you say? If it's a good one? Okay,
it's
I'll
a
try
good
not to
one.
do a bad one. Let me see what, we'll see. Maybe I'll do a Pesach. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that would be
can't think
great.
that far
We'd
ahead.
love it.
I
A
wanted to
Pesach
join
one,
this
something
class.
about Pesach? Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I wanted to join this class when I was in Israel, but it's 6 hours ahead. It was two in the morning. Like,
Oh, yeah, 11 minus 6, 5 in the morning. Yeah. Yeah, because it was,
Right.
yeah. I get that. It's okay. Don't worry about it. By the way, they're posted, Robert, if you want to watch. All right, my
Thank you.
friends, thank you for coming on.
Thank
I will
you.
let you know what'll
Thank you.
happen in 2 weeks. Always a pleasure. Really, I felt the discussion today, just we needed it. We needed to talk about, well, I don't think we should every time talk about how difficult anti-Semitism is, but let's go back to reading the Megillah. But I think at least once we needed to pause and say, okay, we see seeds of this right here. That's what I wanted to.
Right, but for us Rochesterians, and I can only speak for myself, you enlightened us about what you're doing,
Yeah.
which, which is great, and,
Yeah.
we'll spread the word.
Good. See, okay, good. So something come of that. Great.
Yep,
All right, friends, be well. Bye-bye. Take good care.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.